He told me, "You're a disappointment." Then threw me out of the house I gave up everything to protect, and handed my mother's bedroom to his mistress. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, I stayed silent for too long, and by the time I spoke up, my name had been erased, the will rewritten, the truth buried. Want to know how I dug it back up? I knew I was running late, and honestly, I intended it that way. There's something safer about arriving when the room is already full, less chance to be pulled into conversation, more space to just blend in and sit quietly. That night, the tribute dinner for my father's 35 years running the family auto shop was supposed to be a celebration. At least, that's how they pitched it in the group email Colt forwarded me 2 days before. I pulled up outside the rental hall in a dress that still smelled faintly of cedar from the closet. My hands stayed on the steering wheel longer than needed. I had helped rebuild that shop after Mom died. Gave up a job, my apartment in Houston, friends I never got to say goodbye to. I came back when nobody else did. Inside, I found myself near the kitchen entrance. It wasn't assigned seating, but somehow, it always is. Kendra floated across the room in something sleeveless and sparkly, her arm hooked through Dad's like she'd earned it. I watched from the shadows while she made her way toward the stage, heels clicking louder than they needed to. There was a screen playing family photos in the background. I recognized some from childhood, birthday cakes, school plays, summer road trips. Not a single one past high school. No photo of me with grease on my face from working at the shop last summer. No picture of me holding Mom's hand in the hospital. They didn't just forget me, they edited me out. I don't know why I expected anything different. The program started. Colt's name came up 3 times in the first 15 minutes. He really took off after college, someone said from the next table over. Dad beamed as they talked about the legacy he was passing on. When Kendra took the mic, she called him the most resilient man I know. Her voice had that polite southern syrup to it, too sweet to be sincere. I waited, sip after sip of cheap white wine, for my name. For one mention. It never came. "Strange you didn't say anything," Aunt Jean murmured as she walked by my table. "I figured you'd speak for your mom." I just smiled and took another drink. No sense ruining my mascara over people who wouldn't notice either way. Back at the house, I slipped through the front door while the others lingered on the porch with cigars and laughter. My old bedroom was a storage closet now, cardboard boxes labeled "Donate," old tax files, a treadmill folded up against the wall. I stood in the doorway for a long minute before stepping in. The twin bed creaked when I sat. A crooked metal frame barely held up the mattress. There was no room for a nightstand, so I left my phone on top of a stack of plastic bins. My name, once scribbled in marker on the bookshelf, had been scratched out. I ran my finger over the ghost of the ink. From the corner of my eye, I caught the shimmer of silk. Kendra's robe, hanging on the back of the master bathroom door. I gave up a full life in Houston. My job, my apartment, a man who wanted to marry me. And for what? To come back and get squeezed out of the only home I ever knew? I stared at the ceiling like it might offer answers. All I got was the sound of champagne corks popping downstairs. Dad asked me to stay when Mom got sick. Colt had just moved to New Mexico, said he couldn't handle watching her fade. I didn't blame him, not then. When Dad asked, I packed up without questions, told my boss I'd only be gone for a few months. It turned into years. Then Kendra showed up, 6 months after the funeral, in a car that cost more than the house I grew up in. Said she and Mom had been friends. Said she was just here to help. Within 2 weeks, she was redecorating. Within 2 months, she was sleeping in my mother's bed. "Just let her have the space," Dad told me once. "You don't need much anyway." I had a whole life before this. I didn't need much, until I gave it all up for him. Later that night, I found myself washing dishes while they laughed in the living room. My hands moved through the soap and water like they had a mind of their own. "Rowdy's more like a live-in daughter than a real one, huh?" Kendra said, loud enough for the room to laugh. I didn't respond, didn't even flinch. If silence was currency, I'd be rich and still broke. The last glass was done. I dried my hands on a towel, stepped around the corner, and stared at the space above the sink. Mom's pearl-glazed teapot, her favorite, the one she used every Sunday morning, was gone. My throat clenched. I checked the drying rack. The cabinets. Nothing. Out back, under the dim porch light, I found the trash bin open. Inside, cracked and caked in something sticky, was the teapot, dumped like yesterday's mail. I picked it up carefully, brushing off the dirt like I was touching her hand again. I was rinsing off a casserole dish when I heard them laugh. The lights were low in the kitchen. I had turned them down myself, made it feel less like a spotlight on my own invisibility. The water ran over my hands, not quite hot, not quite cold, just there, and then his voice cut through. Rowdy doesn't leave 'cause she's got nowhere else to go. A couple chuckles followed, too casual to be cruel, unless you were the one they were about. Another voice, lighter, probably one of Colt's buddies. Or maybe she's just hanging around for the will to pop. That one landed different. They didn't know I was still standing there, quiet in the half-shadow, towel over one shoulder. I didn't move, didn't even breathe for a second. I've learned that it's easier to be talked about when they think you've already left the room. I wiped my hands, slow and steady, then stepped out where they could see me. Well, I said, almost with a grin, I do make a great ghost, don't I? They froze. Kendra's eyes widened, only for a beat. Then she tilted her head and sipped her wine. Colt shifted in his chair. Dad didn't even blink. If you had ambition, he said, you wouldn't still be here. He didn't say it with venom. That was the worst part. He said it like it was fact, like it was weather. The silence that followed hurt more than the line itself. No one laughed. No one corrected him. They just looked anywhere but at me. I smiled again, because it's easier than crying in front of people who think you're a punchline. I walked back into the kitchen without a word, left the glasses on the counter, went up to my storage closet of a room. I didn't bother to close the door. Lying there, I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the first time something like that had happened. It came to me, fast and sharp, age 14, at the Rotary Club's holiday dinner. I had just come back from setting up the raffle table with Mom. Dad leaned over to a group of guys and said, "She's got her mama's brains, but none of her style." They all laughed. I laughed too, louder than I should have. Thought that if I did, maybe it wouldn't stick. It always stuck. Over the years, he kept doing it, little stabs dressed up as humor. My daughter's real talented, if only she'd use it. Don't mind her. She's still figuring out what she wants to be when she grows up. And every time someone chuckled, patted me on the back like I was in on the joke. He never raised his hand at me. He just let other people laugh until I disappeared. Mom used to step in. She'd change the subject, squeeze my hand under the table, give him a look he'd pretend not to see. She once told me, "Not all abuse is loud, baby. Sometimes it's the silence that bruises you." She wasn't wrong. The next morning, I came down early. Needed coffee more than conversation. Kendra was already there, sitting at the kitchen island in a robe that looked like it belonged in a hotel suite, not a Texas home. Colt leaned against the fridge, arms crossed. "She's always been a little dramatic, don't you think?" Kendra said, not even pretending to whisper. "I mean, it's not like we asked her to sacrifice everything." Colt didn't respond, just scratched his chin and avoided my eyes. Dad walked in, poured himself some coffee, and walked right past me like I wasn't standing there. I didn't say good morning, didn't ask how he slept. When people leave you out enough times, you stop showing up in your own life. I took my cup and went out to the porch. Sat there watching the wind move through trees that hadn't been trimmed in a while. I was tired, not the kind of nap fixes, the kind that makes your bones feel older than they are. Later, I decided to try. I don't know why. Maybe it was foolish, or maybe I still hoped he had it in him to say sorry. I found him in the garage, pretending to organize tools. "About last night," I said. "That hurt." He didn't even turn around. "Don't take everything so personal," he muttered. "You're too sensitive." "I'm not being sensitive," I replied, holding my ground. "I'm being honest. It wasn't a joke. It was the clearest thing you've said in years." He set a wrench down louder than he needed to, then brushed past me on his way back to the house. Didn't look back, didn't speak. I stood there for a long minute, staring at the space he used to fill. I wanted an apology. What I got was air. Later that night, I checked my phone. A message from someone I hadn't heard from since high school. "Heard you're back. Word is, you're just waiting on the house. True?" I didn't reply. Just sat there staring at the screen, letting it sink in how far people would go to believe a lie if it helped them ignore their own silence. 3 days after the tribute dinner, I heard about the appreciation event. Not from my father, not from Colt, just a passing mention in a Facebook post by one of Dad's old mechanics. A catered dinner, open bar, live music, said it was being hosted by the shop's suppliers and friends to honor those who keep the Carver legacy strong. I figured maybe the invite got lost, or maybe it was one of those no need for formal invites, it's family type deals. So, I dressed up. Black dress, hair curled, light makeup. Not to impress anyone, just to remind myself I hadn't disappeared. I pulled into the parking lot just after sunset. The event was at the Wichita Golf Club banquet hall, the kind of place folks rent for retirement parties and second weddings. The porch lights glowed soft yellow. People I hadn't seen since Mom's funeral were mingling outside with drinks in hand. At the door, a man in a red blazer asked for my name. I told him. He checked the list. Checked again. It looked up. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "This is a private event. Your name's not on the list." Behind him, through the glass doors, I saw them. Colt and Kendra. She was wearing that same red dress she wore to Mom's memorial, laughing, holding a wine glass. Dad beside her, nodding along to something one of the vendors said. I didn't argue, didn't demand to be let in. I just nodded, turned around, and walked back to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat, facing the front entrance from across the lot. The dome light went out after a minute, leaving me in the kind of dark that doesn't ask questions. I pulled out my phone, opened a new message to Dad, wrote, "Didn't realize the appreciation party was invite only. Hope you had a good night." Deleted it. If I'd walked in, I'd be labeled disruptive, emotional, the dramatic daughter again. If I stayed out, I was invisible. Either way, I lost. Mom used to say, some folks wear smiles like masks. The problem is, people believe them. I started the engine and drove home. No music, just road noise and headlights. Back at the house, it was quiet. I changed into sweatpants, wiped off my lipstick, and went into the study, what used to be Mom's den. I hadn't touched her desk in a long time. It still smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. I started going through drawers, not sure what I was looking for. Maybe an answer, maybe evidence that I hadn't just imagined my place here. Then I found it. A manila envelope marked, Property Update, Carver Residence. It wasn't locked up, just buried under tax folders and outdated warranties. I pulled it out, sat on the couch, and opened it. Inside was a printed deed transfer, signed by Dad and notarized, dated 14 months ago. The house, my childhood home, had been transferred entirely into his name, quietly. No discussion, no heads up, just a line of ink that erased me. Mom's will had said 50-50. Between him and me, not anymore. My chest felt tight. Not the dramatic kind, just the slow kind, like an anchor lowering inside you. I whispered to myself, not even a conversation, just silence and ink. The kitchen felt colder than usual. I made a cup of tea just to give my hands something to do. The corner shelf where Mom's teapot used to sit was empty now. Had been since the trash can. Kendra walked in, barefoot, holding her phone. "We had to clean out some old files," she said. "Hope that's okay." "You threw out more than just paper," I replied. She smiled, soft and rehearsed. "It's just a house, honey. People matter more." I looked at her, at the way she leaned against the counter like she owned it. Maybe she did. Then why do I feel like a ghost inside my own? The next day, I called Miss Patty. She'd been Mom's best friend since they were 16. "Did Mom ever update her will?" I asked. Patty paused. "Viola left a handwritten addendum. She gave me a sealed copy to hold. I never sent it because, well, your daddy said not to." I was quiet. "Can I see it?" Another pause. "Yes. Come by tomorrow. I'll leave the porch light on." That night, I wrote the date and time down in my notebook. My hand shook a little. I closed the notebook, took a breath, and felt my phone buzz. A message from Kendra. "Next time, Don't show up where you're not wanted. It's embarrassing for all of us. I stared at her words, then at the deed still on my table. Something in me cracked, but it wasn't fear. Miss Patty's house still smelled like lemon oil and Sunday mornings. The curtains hadn't changed since I was a teenager. Soft florals, faded from sun. A gospel record played low in the background, scratched just enough to sound real. I hadn't sat on that couch since before Mom passed, and even now, I didn't really sit. I hovered. She set 2 mugs of coffee on the table. Her hand shook slightly as she placed the manila envelope down. It was sealed. My mother's handwriting stretched across the front. For Rowdy. To be opened when needed. I didn't reach for it right away. Patty said nothing. She just folded her hands and waited. I looked at it like it might burn me. This might be the last thing my mother ever told me, I said, more to myself than her. When I finally peeled it open, there were 2 items, a folded letter, lined paper, corners soft with age, and a second stapled set, a notarized handwritten will. The letter was short, loving, clear. The will was even clearer. It named me as the sole beneficiary of the house. It was dated 2 weeks before she died. Witnessed. Signed. Legal. But it had never been filed. She gave this to you, I said slowly, still staring at the paper. And you? Didn't send it in. Patty nodded, eyes glassy. Your daddy told me not to. Said you were already living there. Said stirring it up would just make things harder. I looked up from the paper. So he knew, and chose to erase her anyway. She didn't defend him. I'm sorry, Rowdy, she whispered. I should have done more. I nodded, because saying anything else would have broken the moment. I didn't forgive her, not yet, but I understood. People wrap guilt around themselves like a warm blanket, keeps them from having to feel the cold truth of what they let happen. I left her house with the envelope under my arm. Back home, I laid the new will next to the property deed I'd found days earlier. The signatures were different. Not dramatically, just enough to see the slant changed, the pen pressure off. Dad's name had been replicated, sloppily but convincingly enough for someone who thought nobody would ever check. I didn't think. I just grabbed the keys and drove to Colt's. He was outside, working on an old mower, sweating through his t-shirt like it was summer already. When I told him what I'd found, showed him both sets of papers, his face didn't go red or pale. It went blank. I checked the new will, he said finally. Dad's will. My name's not on it either. It took a few seconds for that to register. What? He changed it last year. Didn't say anything, just did it. I figured he was mad about me leaving. Figured maybe you were still in it. Guess we both figured wrong. We sat in silence for a while. The mower sat half-oiled. The sun dipped behind the pecan tree out back. It was never about giving one of us more, I said. It was about cutting both of us out. He nodded. We drove back to the house together but parked down the road. Colt wanted to storm in, demand answers. I stopped him at the gate. Not yet, I said. Not until we know everything. We talk to a lawyer first. We get every copy of every piece of paper. We don't make noise. We make moves. You sure about this? He asked. I'm not doing this to get a house back, I said. I'm doing this because someone tried to erase my mother's handwriting, like it never mattered. That night, I lay on the mattress in the room that used to be mine, the envelope beside me on the pillow. I remembered every birthday note Mom ever wrote. Same pen, same slanted cursive. Always ended with, "Love you more than the house." I didn't cry. There was nothing left to come out. I just stared at the ceiling, the fan spinning slow above me, and thought, I believed losing my place in the house was rock bottom, but that was only the floor. Underneath was something worse, knowing I hadn't even started to fall yet. And still, beneath all of that, a new feeling stirred. Quiet, not warm, not angry, just steady. Resolve. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. A new voicemail. Dad's voice. Calm. Too calm. I hear you've been talking to people about paperwork. Don't start something you can't finish. I sat on the edge of that crooked bed in the room that used to be mine, listening to Dad's voicemail again. The words didn't change, but the way I heard them did. I hear you've been talking to people about paperwork. Don't start something you can't finish. Threats in soft tones are still threats. He didn't yell, didn't curse, just slid the knife between my ribs in the quietest way possible, the kind of calm that lets you know he meant every syllable. I stared at the phone a while longer, then opened Mom's old voicemail, the one I kept saved. She'd recorded it just before a doctor's appointment, told me not to forget the lemon bread at the store. Ended with, "Love you, baby girl. Be kind, even when folks don't deserve it." That was her way, love first, even when it hurt. But this time, kindness wasn't the answer. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was about facts. And facts I could handle. Later that afternoon, Miss Patty called. Said she found something in her late husband's garage, a flash drive he'd labeled just in case. I pulled into her gravel driveway before the second ring ended. She stood on the porch in a sweater too warm for the weather, holding the tiny black stick like it was evidence in a trial. "I thought it was junk," she said, handing it over. "Turns out, I was wrong." I didn't wait. Took it straight home, plugged it into Mom's old laptop. The file name stared back at me in all caps. Boone Kitchen Mic MP3. I hit play. The first voice was Kendra's, clear, relaxed, talking like no one was ever going to hear a word of it. "He's almost signed everything over. That girl Rowdy, she's a speed bump." Then laughter. Smug. Familiar. "She's still clinging to her mom's ghost. Cute, huh?" It wasn't a confession, but it was enough. I played it once more, then shut the laptop. Colt came by just after sundown. I played it for him without saying a word. He sat back in his chair, jaw clenched. "This is bad," he said quietly. "This is bigger than we thought." "Yeah," I replied. "And it's just beginning." He wanted to do something, go confront Dad, call a meeting, blow it all up, but I stopped him. "No, let them think we're quiet. That's when people get sloppy." He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. The Rowdy he remembered wasn't this still, but time has a way of shaving the edges off a person. I printed out a transcript, nothing flashy, just clean words on plain paper. Truth doesn't need noise, just timing. The next morning, I walked into the house without knocking. Kendra was at the kitchen table on a Zoom call, her voice bouncing off the walls like perfume. I waited by the sink. When she ended the call, I walked over and placed the envelope right in front of her. She glanced down. No name, just one sentence in thick black ink. "This isn't about you. But it will become about you, if you keep going." She let out a short laugh. "What, now you're threatening me?" I didn't blink. "No. I'm reminding you, people like you don't last in silence. We do." She opened it, read the transcript. Her face didn't drop, not right away, but something shifted behind her eyes. She didn't laugh again. I didn't wait for a reaction. I turned and walked out. As I stepped off the porch, I thought back to all the times I'd been told I was too quiet, too soft, not strong enough. Funny thing is, it's the quiet ones who stay standing after the storm. I texted Colt. "It started. Don't react. Not yet." That night, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The light from the neighbor's porch flickered through the trees. The world kept moving. Then my phone buzzed. New email from a law office I didn't recognize. Subject: Cease and desist. Defamation, action pending. Message: Cease all defamatory activity, or we will pursue legal action immediately. I didn't delete it. I forwarded it to Dax Granger and to 3 reporters who didn't scare easy. The legal papers were heavier than they looked. Sitting across from Dax Granger, the man was calm, like he'd signed 100 of these freezes before. He probably had. But not one of them had my mother's handwriting erased from a will. Not one of them had my father's signature next to a lie. He slid the final form across the desk. "This makes it real. You sure you're ready for that kind of war?" I didn't flinch. "I've lived in the battlefield. I said. "This is just paperwork." He nodded once, tapped the folder twice, and pushed it into the courier's envelope, sealed it. That sound, it echoed in my chest more than I'd expected. One more thing that couldn't be undone. Let him feel powerless, I added quietly. Just once. Around lunch, the courier knocked on my father's door. Kendra answered, wearing something low-cut and silk, hair wrapped in a towel like she hadn't planned on visitors. She looked confused at first, then interested. Waylon came up behind her. No words yet, just eyebrows pulling tight. He took the envelope, opened it, skimmed the top line, and stopped cold halfway through. "You brought outsiders into this?" His voice cracked. Not loud, but cracked all the same. I stood in the yard, watching. Didn't speak until he looked right at me. "You made it outside," I said, "the second you locked that door on me." Kendra didn't say a word, but her mouth curled, just a little. The next car in the driveway was Colt's. He hadn't said much when I told him the plan. He just showed up. That's something I've learned to value more than words. Dad turned to him. "You too?" Colt wasn't loud, never had been. He looked him square in the face. "I didn't pick a side. You did, when you signed us both out of what Mom left." The air felt tighter after that. Kendra stayed leaned against the doorway, watching like a woman at a poker table who already knew the deck. I looked at her then. "Did you ever love anyone here?" "Or just the walls they stood in?" She smiled. "I love not being poor. That count?" I didn't move, didn't react, just stored it, somewhere deep enough not to poison me. There's a saying that floats around family reunions and holiday dinners. Blood is thicker than water. But I remembered what Miss Patty once told me, what the full phrase really was. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. What you choose matters more than what you're born into. I remembered when I was 8. A storm hit hard one night, knocked the power out. I was scared, crying in the dark. Dad held my hand till the lights came back. That same hand now sat on a legal document, signing me away. You can't unlove someone, but you can stop letting them be the reason you bleed. I didn't storm out, didn't slam a door or throw a final line over my shoulder. I just walked. He didn't stop me, didn't say my name. He stood there on the porch, still holding the freeze notice. Didn't tear it up, didn't drop it, just stood. And in that silence, I heard it louder than anything he ever said. "You were right, but I'll never say it. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition. But sometimes you only get one when you're willing to let go of the other." I was halfway home when the phone buzzed. I let it ring once before answering voicemail. It was the bank. "We've flagged a suspicious attempt to transfer the remaining balance from the Carver Trust." The courthouse waiting room was colder than it needed to be. Colt sat next to me, his hands clasped between his knees, eyes fixed on the tiled floor. We hadn't said much during the drive, didn't need to. The silence held everything that mattered. Kendra strutted in 5 minutes late, sunglasses still on indoors. She chewed her gum like it was a statement, phone in hand, fingers tapping out some message I didn't want to imagine. She didn't look at me, but I felt her glance skim the top of my head like I was just another object in the room. Then came my father. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not in size, but in presence, like something in him had folded inward since the last time he tried to calm me down over the phone. He walked past me without a word, not even a nod. We weren't on trial, but I had already been judged for years. The clerk called out, "In re. Carver Property Dispute and Injunction Hearing. Courtroom C." We stood. Dax Granger led the way, files in hand. He didn't walk fast, didn't slow down, just paced like he had done this 100 times, which he had. Inside the courtroom, it smelled like paper and air conditioning. The judge sat up high, quiet, and unreadable. Dax began. He started with the facts. The altered deed, the withheld will, the verified audio file. He spoke clean, with no drama. He didn't need to make it sound worse than it was. It was bad enough on its own. Kendra crossed her legs 3 times in the span of 2 minutes. Every move louder than her silence. When the judge asked if I'd like to address the court, I hesitated, then stood. I didn't write a speech. I lived one. I walked to the podium, took a breath, and began. I'm not here to take anything back. I'm here to stop what was stolen from being buried. I looked directly at my father when I said that. He didn't flinch. I didn't lose my home. I lost the version of my father who once loved me. I lost the room where my mother used to sit and write birthday notes in pen that always smudged at the edges. I let the silence linger before continuing. I'm not angry anymore. I'm awake. I'm done pretending that silence is peace. It's not. It's just delayed pain. I turned slightly toward the judge. My mother was a quiet woman, but she never stopped fighting for what mattered. She wrote this will by hand because she wanted her intentions to live longer than her body. And that woman's wishes got buried so someone else could decorate a bathroom in marble and claim it was hers. The judge didn't blink. She died with grace. I'm here with fire, but I brought it in the name of the truth. The room was still, and then Kendra cracked. You think she was perfect? She shouted, standing up like she forgot where she was. She left him broken. She babied her. No wonder he— Miss Boone, sit down, the judge said sternly. Kendra's chest heaved. She dropped back into her chair like a sack of nerves. I turned to her, calm. That's the difference between us. I don't need to break others to be heard. Waylon hadn't spoken once. He just sat there, head bowed, as if the world moved too fast for him now. Or maybe for the first time, it finally caught up. Cowards don't always run. Some just sit and pray that someone else will catch the fire they lit. The verdict came faster than I expected. The judge ruled the handwritten will valid. The house would go into probate. A full fraud investigation into the deed transfer was opened. Kendra was served the notice before we left the room. Colt placed a hand on my shoulder. No words, just weight and warmth. Outside, the press waited. Microphones, flashes, voices yelling, Ms. Carver, do you feel vindicated? I didn't stop, didn't speak. Some truths aren't for headlines. They're for healing. We made it to the edge of the parking lot when I saw him. Waylon. Sitting alone on a bench under the courthouse arch. As I passed, he looked up. You're still not welcome at my table, he said softly. I stopped. Good, I replied. I've already built my own. 1 month passed. The town hadn't changed much, but somehow it looked different through new eyes. My eyes. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't explaining. Just living. The local paper ran the story on a Tuesday. A grainy courtroom photo, the headline too bold. Inheritance injustice. Daughter wins after family silence. I didn't want the spotlight, but it found me anyway. The next few days, my inbox filled with messages. Some kind, some curious, a few cruel. One email just said, took guts. That one stuck. At the grocery store, an older woman stopped me near the canned peaches. You said what we never dared to. Her hand brushed my arm, gentle and knowing. She didn't need to say more. I never asked to be anyone's voice. I just didn't want to disappear quietly. Viola's porch opened on a warm spring afternoon. It didn't feel like a grand opening. No ribbon, no balloons. Just a screen door that creaked the way I remembered, a bell above the entrance, and shelves filled with secondhand paperbacks that smelled like dust and stories. The porch swing out front had been repaired. New chain, but same wooden slats. Inside, I kept a photo of Mom behind the counter, next to her pearl-glazed teapot, the one I'd pulled from the trash. It held pens now. I figured she'd find that funny. We had lemon cookies on the table by the window, the kind she used to bake. I played old country tunes she liked and let the door stay open. Colt showed up late, brought flowers wrapped in newspaper. Thought you hated flowers, I said. He shrugged. They're not for you. They're for the counter. Miss Patty came next, hugged me longer than I expected. Your mom'd be proud, she whispered. A woman and her daughter came in while I was restocking the poetry shelf. The girl picked up a book with a pale blue cover, Women Who Survived Their Silence. She held it to her chest like it meant something. Maybe it did. Waylon never came. I heard he sold the truck, moved into a small place on the edge of town. No one seemed to know much else. That suited me fine. Sometimes I wonder if he reads the comments under the article. If he knows how many people saw his silence, I don't want revenge. I just hope one day he understands what he gave away. I passed his old photo last week at the community center, some award from years ago. I looked straight at it and kept walking. At night, I write. Not for a book, just for myself. I journal what happened, what it meant, what it changed. One line stuck on the page. Forgiveness is a language I'm still learning. But I've stopped waiting for their apology to begin. I reread the letter Mom left me last night. Didn't cry, just traced the ink with my thumb. She would have loved this porch and the quiet. Evening rolled in with soft light through the window. The air smelled like books and the faint citrus of dish soap. I brewed a cup of tea. Mom's pot still worked fine, sat on the swing, let the cup warm both hands. A girl walked by on her bike, slowed, looked up. "This place feels safe," she said. I smiled. That's the only thing I ever wanted to build. I didn't get my family back, but I found myself, and that's more than enough. As I closed up for the night, flipping the sign to "closed" and locking the front, I noticed something in the mailbox. No return address, just my name in block letters. Inside was a photo. Me, maybe 5 years old, sitting on my father's shoulders, arms stretched like I could touch the sky. On the back, in faded ink, "I'm proud of you." I didn't cry. I just closed the door behind me, turned off the porch light, and whispered, "Too late. But thanks."